Senator Warren, you tweeted yesterday, quote, with stocks soaring while millions are out of work and struggling to pay bills, it's not news that the stock market doesn't reflect our actual economy. Stimulus checks have been going out, and likely that bigger ones are soon to go out still. And there's been plenty of evidence to suggest some people are using that to invest in the stock market. Is that what their main intention is? Are you happy for people to do that if that's what they wish to use their stimulus checks for? Or does it sort of accentuate a little bit the problem you referred to of the sort of two-speed economy that you referred to in your tweet?
Look. Right now, we are suffering through a K-shaped recovery. The people at the top are getting richer and richer and richer. And people who make less than $40,000 a year are now suffering through 20% unemployment. They're getting poorer and poorer and poorer. We've been talking about wealth inequality in this country for several years now. This pandemic could accelerate it at a rate that we had never even imagined in our worst nightmares. Right now, what the stimulus checks are about are getting money into the hands of people who need it and getting that money into our economy to support it. You know, the economy is struggling right now. The economic indicators from October to November. They were worse in November than in October. They were worse in December than in November. And we're not through January yet, but it looks like they're going to be worse in January than they were in December. This economy is in trouble. But the stock market, which has become the giant casino and the playground for the billionaires, just keeps spinning upward. That means that our real economy has become completely, or not completely, but has really become detached from where the stock market is. And the real economy right now is suffering. Stimulus checks are a way to deal with that.
But Senator Warren, I mean, surely the market is not the economy, and the market also reflects the great optimism that is out there around the vaccines, around the robust growth that we are looking at in the second half of the year, the tremendous amount of stimulus from the Federal Reserve and from you and the federal government, including potentially another $1.9 trillion. I mean, surely that's reflected in the market. It's not necessarily all the casino, is it?
Well, look, we have to understand what's happening in this economy. I mean, did you hear me? A 20% unemployment rate for people making less than $40,000 a year. Women that have been blocked out of their jobs, who are suffering from unemployment more than anyone else because they've had to pick up two jobs at once, one at home and still trying to be in the workplace at the same time. Child care centers that are closed so that people can't go back to work. Right now, Republicans who are saying they don't want to see us put up the money that we need that's in President Biden's plan. Money for vaccines, money for families that need to put food on the table, and money to get our schools open. Now, look, I think we've got a lot of tools and a lot of things we can do, and I want to see us do those things. But we need to have our feet firmly on the ground. And firmly on the ground means acknowledging that tens of millions of people across this country are out of work. Tens of millions more are on the threshold of losing either their homes or their apartments. Tens of millions more have depleted their savings and don't have enough money to put food on the table. That is a core part of the American economy, and that's where Congress needs to respond, and we need to respond quickly and forcefully.
When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado of ManMadeSurvival. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. This is the second video of this series that we're going to be doing this week, because we put in all this stuff together, right? What I'm bringing to you is all these different things that's going on all at the same time. I'm putting them together so I can give you the bigger picture. All right, because we can look at what is going on. We can look at what happened in the past, what's going on now, and what can we do for the future. All right, that's where we have to put our thinking caps right now and really look at this information, digest it, and take the proper steps that we need to in order for us to have a better outcome than we would have if we didn't do anything at all. Now, I started this podcast with Elizabeth Warren, what she said about the economy and everything that she talked about, you know, with the stimulus checks and all those things. Now, the government is taking the steps that they believe are going to be the most important ones for them to boost up the economy, for American people to not have such a bad time right now. Right? They're taking the steps by printing money and giving it away. And right now, they're not having the opposition coming from both sides, you know, from Republicans, from Democrats, or maybe you can even throw in there the independents and others. The reason that there is not a backlash, and rather, you know, people are looking forward to it, for one, is because they really do need the money. Like Elizabeth Warren said, people making $40,000 a year or less, there's 40% unemployment, 20% unemployment. That is a very big number. That is the real number that we look at, that we focus on, because the people who are doing better off, of course, they're not going to have that big, you know, that they're not going to have that much. No, how can I say this? The people who are making more than that, they're not going to have as bad of a bad time as we are having right now. At least not yet. They will have it in the future, but they're going to make sure that they take the steps to offset that. And by doing that, they're going to move to another country who's going to have a stronger currency. All right, and I'm going to be talking about that in the podcast. But as of right now, 20% unemployment for the people who are in the lower rungs of the economy, that is a very devastating blow. Because these are the people who did not have a bigger, or, you know, a much better education, right? We could not go to college, whether we didn't qualify, we didn't have the money, we couldn't apply for the loans, we didn't want the debt, whatever the case may be, we did not go to college, right? So we are working these jobs that do not pay that much, and we're the ones that are being affected by all these restrictions with the lockdowns and everything like that. So that is the reason why when they pass all the stimulus, they're trying to focus it on the people who are on the lower rungs of the economy. But of course, you know, if it wasn't for the restrictions, then they wouldn't be having a bad problem right now. So anyways, who would be the people who would be in the lower rungs of the economy? I believe would be people who are making, you know, anywhere between $7.25 and $18 an hour. Those are the people who are probably making $40,000 or less, you know, depending on the overtime and all these other little things that you have to put into consideration. But let's just say it's that group of people. For this group of people that I mentioned, that Elizabeth Warren mentioned, those are the people who have to be even more aggressive for them to make sure that they have everything in place to have the supply chain in their own backyard. Because if they do not, then they're going to become more reliant on the government, on stimulus checks, and eventually they're gonna be going into a downward spiral where they're going to plummet along with the U.S. currency and the U.S. government. That is why it's important for you to detach yourself from that, to take the steps right now for you to be self-reliant and make sure that you and your family and your alliance are going to be better off for the future. Now, what would happen if today, right, the United States dollar just completely was destroyed? There was hyperinflation everywhere, and the government couldn't really do much about it. Will we still have mass evictions from houses and from apartments and stuff like that? To be quite honest with you, I do not know the answer to that, because you would think if we're in such a bad shape that we have hyperinflation in the country, and you know, it doesn't really matter how much work, the money is worthless, would cops, you know, the sheriff's department, would the banks, would they really pursue kicking millions of people out of their home? Of course, that's just gonna fan the flames of a revolution here in the United States. Now, that is just, we have to wait and see what happens with that one, because to be honest, I really don't know. Because, you know, I have a 30-year mortgage, and I've only had my house for a handful of years. If the dollar was to collapse right now, and the bank was to call the mortgage, I will lose it because I don't have the amount of money that would be enough for me to pay it off. I mean, there's a reason why I have a 30-year mortgage and I didn't just pay it cash for it up front. So I would be affected, but I wouldn't be the only one. It would be the same for millions of people all throughout the country. Now, let's go with the people who are renting places, like apartments. Right now, they're not paying their bills. They're not paying their rent, some of them. And they're, into thousands of dollars in debt. And if those people are not paying, that means that the people who own the land or who own the apartment complexes, they're going to be delinquent. So if they have to forfeit, or they have to give the mortgage back to the bank, or the bank calls the mortgage to be paid in full, will they have to kick all those people out? So what would happen in the future like that? Something of that magnitude. We don't know. But we have to make sure that we prepare for that. And there's several ways that you can do it, okay? The first one, and, just to be clear, all this is the part of the prepping for all this economic devastation. I want to talk about it first. But the point is that what you could do is you can come along with your alliance and you can buy off land, a plot of land. It can be as big as you want it to be. If it's paid off in full, all you have to worry about would be the property taxes with the government. Will the government waive it for a while because, coronavirus is going on and we have hyperinflation? I don't know. But the way that they're doing things right now is that they're just pushing things back to where the economy comes back, to normal. And then then people can resume paying their bills. Will they do that in the future? Maybe. But if you own the piece of land and you put everything that you need on it right now, then nobody can kick you out of it. Just the IRS if you don't pay for it. See what I'm saying? So that would be the steps that you can take in order for you to have the possibility of having a place to go if you do become, if they come and get you out of your house. If for whatever reason, even if we have hyperinflation, we have all these violence going on everywhere, somehow the banks, the sheriffs, and the IRS find a way to come kick you out of your house, then you have somewhere to go. So that's why it's important for you to have a bug out location that you can go to and have everything you need there also for when something like that happens. Because, they'll give you, let's say, a 30-day notice, and they're going to tell you that in 30 days, you have to go. You can move everything to the new location that you have paid for. And then you and your alliance can live there. You and your family can live there. So there's steps that you can take right now to offset that. All right. So I want to get into the first headline because they did pass the stimulus package that Biden wants to do. The $1.9 trillion in spending that Joe Biden wants to put into the economy here in the next few weeks. Now, what they passed was not so much the bill itself, but the I guess you can say the ability to start working on it. Because that's kind of how they do it. Like, they have this issue and they say, we're gonna vote on it to see if we're gonna address it or not. If they vote that they're not gonna address it, then it just, they just throw it out the window. If they say, yes, we're gonna look at this one, then that's when they bring it into the House, they bring it to the Senate, they work out the details, and then they vote on it. Okay? And right now the Democrats have both the House and the Senate, or technically all three, and the White House. So if the House passes it, the Senate is going to pass it, and Joe Biden is going to sign it. That's kind of how the government system works. Now, since it's all been controlled by one party, they have no excuses of things not going through. And that's exactly what happened here. Right? Listen to this headline and listen to this article. Senate Dems push through $1.9 trillion stimulus blueprint as Harris casts first tiebreak. This is from SearHedge. The House has just approved the Senate amendment to the stimulus bill budget plan that were approved during the 15-hour vote-a-rama, leaving the plan on path to reconciliation. Hours earlier, President Biden told reporters that he would insist on the $1,400 stimulus, as Americans were promised, while Nancy Pelosi added that the House would move at breakneck speed to guide the plan to completion by March 15. The latest proposal from Democrats would send $1,400 check to individuals earning $50,000 or less and $2,800 to married couples earning $100,000 or less, according to the Washington Post. This, of course, is far less than Democrats thought they were voting for when then candidate Biden told them $2,000 checks would go out immediately. Parents of children would also receive an additional $1,400 per child, which will leave a family of 4 with $5,600. On top of this, Democrats are pushing for child tax benefits, which would provide $3,600 per child under 6 and $3,000 per child ages 6 to 17. Eligibility will likely be based on prior year's income, meaning people would need to qualify for the checks based on what they made in 2019 or 2020, according to the reports. Okay, so for the average American, that is, the best news ever. We're getting, somewhere between $1,400 and $5,600 in this stimulus package. If after they hammer out all the details do come to pass, like this is what they're thinking, that is the details that they're going to be working on. We're going to see around March 15 what is going to be the final product and how much they're actually going to send. Okay, so that is very important because you can take the steps right now for you to have your garden in your own backyard, for you to have the infrastructure in place, for you to have your own, livestock, for you to stockpile a food that is going to last you 20-something years, and also all the other things that you can put in place for you to be self-sufficient, because there's a lot of families out there who are not in that level of preparedness, okay? As we mentioned here in the articles that I've read to you, right, that there's about 59 million people who are going to be food insecure. And to me, that says that there should be 59 million new farmers this coming spring, because people have to take that into their own hands now. That could be something very realistic for people who live in, in the suburbs and in a rural area. People who live in an apartment in New York or, California or any other place in a major city, it's not really something that they can do. Yes, there is, vertical, there's vertical farming and stuff like that, but it does not compare to what you can do in an open field in your own piece of land, with your own chickens and your rabbits and everything else. So if you live in a city and you have the ability to get out, okay, and go to a rural area that is not too far away from your job, and depends how far away you would say it's too far away, and have a piece of land that has water going through it all the time, where the ground is fertile, make sure you don't get, some red mud or something like that, and you have enough space to grow your farm and your animals and stuff like that, and you don't have any neighbors, that would be the best thing. Then you need to take those steps right now if you're able to. Of course, we have seen the unemployment numbers. They're very, very big. There's new unemployment benefits being given out to first-time people who have ever applied for them. So right now, the economy for a lot of people is really, really bad, but not for everyone. Yes, they're estimating somewhere between 20 and 50 million Americans are out of a job right now. Excuse me. But that still leaves over 100 million who are still working, give or take. Let's even say 80 million. If any people in those 80 million who are still working are living in a city or have a type of house that will not let them have a garden or, or farm animals, then you need to go ahead and make the transition to move to a different place where you have more freedom. Because, one of the things about suburbs is that if you live in a community that is controlled by the HOA, if they don't let you have a garden or animals, you're going to have a difficult time. And, those places can be a pain in the neck. I used to know people who had a house in an HOA, community, and they were fined for having the wrong color furniture outside of their balcony. That is just insane. But those are the rules that you sign up for when you buy a house in the HOA. So you have to make sure that you do not get a house in the HOA district or, under their control. Make sure you're as rural as you can get. Now, where I live, my first major city is an hour away. Okay, so I used to work in the city, And I used to drive an hour to work there every day and an hour back. So every day I would drive an hour away. Excuse me, I would drive 2 hours each day. Now, to me, that's not a big problem because, you know, I just put on my headphones. You know, I listen to podcasts, going there and coming back. And in those days, I used to work, you know, 15 hours overtime, stuff like that. I used to work 70 hours a week, and it wasn't really a problem for me. Now, I don't have the ability of doing that right now. So what I do is that I work in a closer area where I live, you know, getting paid $13 an hour, as I've shared with you in the past. So that is not great pay, but it still helps me to be close by. See what I'm saying? But anyways, for me to go back into the city and driving out, you know, 2 hours a day each day is not a big deal. And if or when I find a job that pays more in the city, I'm probably going to take it. You know, depending on how bad things get here in the next few weeks. Because on the place that I'm right now, I have job security. All right, those are the things that you have to look for, that your boss likes you, that the job you're doing, you know, they need you because of the skills that you have. And it's going to be painful for them to get rid of you, right? You have to have the work ethic to where your boss likes you, and you would be one of the very last ones to get fired, you know, if they increase the minimum wage, if they increase taxes on corporations or, you know, family businesses. You know, you want to make sure that you have the best work ethic so you can be the last one to get fired. If they have to let you go because, you know, they're finally closing down because they can no longer pay the taxes and stuff like that. All right. So that brings me to the next headline. All right. The reason that I set it up that way is because in one of the plans from the $1.9 trillion is that it would be mandatory for all the companies all throughout the country to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. All right. And I have talked about this. There has been other podcasts talking about it. There has been other people sharing on Facebook and social media saying that $15 an hour is going to be a bad thing because, for one, we're going through the pandemic right now. Okay. There's businesses closing. If what they're paying right now, they cannot afford, what is it going to be like later on when they have to pay this much more money to people who, you know, who come to work, but they cannot pay them that much because it's just, quite frankly, are not making, you know, that type of money. What's going to happen to those companies who have very razor thin margins? Either they're going to have to lay off a lot of people and scale back their operations, or they're going to have to get, you know, closed down completely. And what that's going to do is going to have a big effect on the local economy. The next headline talks about this. Even though the Biden plan has not really kicked into place, we are seeing the signs of what would happen in a nationwide scale if that was to happen. All right. This one is from the Gateway Pundit. Kroger to close 25% of its stores in Soco Beach City after City Council passes mandate requiring certain companies to pay employees an extra $4 an hour. Supermarket retailer Kroger was forced to close 2 of its stores in Long Beach, California, after the City Council passed a mandate requiring companies with more than 300 employees to pay workers an extra $4 an hour. This is just a taste of what's to come with Joe Biden's federal minimum wage increase to $15 per hour. The mandate, dubbed Hero Pay, was designated to compensate grocery store workers for working in dangerous conditions due to the COVID pandemic. But it backfired. Ralph's and Food 4 Less, owned by the parent company Kroger, will be closing on April 17 due to the oppressive ordinances. All right, that is just a taste. It's a very small taste because if Kroger, being this, you know, multi-million-dollar company, but you know what? I'm going to do this live. I'm going to see what is Kroger's net worth. In 2019, Kroger's net earnings amounted to $1.51 billion US. Kroger is a supermarket chain operating in the United States. It was founded by Bernard Kroger in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1883. All right, so they have earnings of $1.51 billion, and they did not want to give $4 an hour extra. Okay, so just think about that, okay? Think about how the companies, even though they're having billions of dollars in profits, they are not going to give a penny more. So that is just in Southern California. I think that's what SoCal means. But anyways, if that's just one store, what's going to happen all throughout the country when small pop and mom shops have to close because they cannot afford that? Okay, they're going to increase the taxes on them as well. All these corporations are going to lay off massive amount of people. What we are seeing right now is going to be even worse than it was back in 2008. So what is going to happen to all those people? They're either going to go to unemployment or they're going to try to find another job who is willing to pay them $15 an hour, you know, because of the set skills that they have. And if not, they're going to have a economical down spiral from there. So the good news about the $1.9 trillion stimulus package is that a lot of people, both left and right, including Bernie Sanders, of all people, they kind of said that they're not going to push for the $15 an hour pay increase right now because of the pandemic. You know, they might do it later on whenever the pandemic is officially, you know, conquered. But the point is that if even Bernie Sanders can see how devastating that's going to be for the economy, you know that it cannot be done for a very long time. Okay, that's not including all the debt that we have, you know, the interest rates that the Fed already given to companies and stuff like that, all the money pumping into the markets, into the economy. So that is just a very small piece, a very small taste of what could happen later on with a bigger, broader, more expensive package that they want to pass in the next few months and years. Because, you know, this $1.9 trillion is not just the only bill that they want to do with all that spending. They also want to do the Green New Deal. They also want to forgive student debt. They want to spend even more on vaccines and stuff like that. So all of that, all those things combined, what is it going to do? It's going to create an environment that is going to place us in hyperinflation mode, all right? Because if it doesn't, then we're just going to continue to print into eternity, and nobody is really going to care about how much debt we got until other countries can no longer get paid what they need to be paid. When they can no longer afford, then it's going to be very devastating for them as well. Right? So that's why they have to make sure that they take steps right now. So now let's focus on that for just a second. If we are seeing those things going on right now, how much more should you position yourself to make sure that when the supply chain collapses, you can still feed your kids, that you can still feed your elderly parents, that you can still take care of yourself, right? That you have the tools in place right now for you to have a successful little farm going on in your own backyard. All the signs are there. We just don't know when it's going to implode. But the World Economic Forum has told us that by 2030, the United States is no longer going to be, the world superpower. Why? Because we have spent ourselves into oblivion, because we had a nuclear war and we are no longer able to defend ourselves. What would it be? Let's not forget what the Deagle report has kept saying for very many years, that by 2025, the U.S. population would decrease from the 320-something million that we have to 99 million. So let's understand what we may be facing later. So what could it be? Would it be the food price increase that's going to make people migrate out of here? The dollar collapsing? The government pretty much declaring war on its citizens? Or would it be a World War III scenario? Or would it be all of the above? What could happen that would make the United States population go down so drastically? That is why you have to make sure that you take the steps right now to withstand that when and if it comes. The next thing that I have for you is a video, because all this money printing is going to be something that is going to have a really big impact on the US dollar. Okay, as we know right now, since I think it's 1930, or I think it's 1970. I'll have to double check. But the point is that since one of those two periods, the dollar has decreased in value over 98%. So back in one of those 2 dates, what used to cost $1, now it costs 98. So that's how bad the purchasing power has been lost in the US dollar. And they're projecting that in the next few years it's going to decrease even more to where it's going to be worthless. All right. So this video is going to address that issue, and you should really pay attention to it and ponder on what this person is going to say. This one is from uswatchdog.com and, also from Zero Hedge. The video is from US Watchdog, but I found it in a Zero Hedge article. And the headline for that is, "This could take the dollar down. Alasdair MacLeod warns there is a real crisis in the winds." All right, here's that video.
And, the last time we talked, you didn't have good news about the dollar. You thought it could break up. But what it did do, it could get, really hammered hard. But what it did do, since Election Day, it's off 4 or 5%. I mean, that's not a great sign for a world reserve currency where 60%, 70% of the business in America, in the world, is done in dollars, is off 4 or 5%. So your prediction of the dollar of it, it didn't crash, but it sure got, a pie in the face at the end of the year, down 5%, which is big for, a currency used that widespread. What do you think about the dollar with all the currency printing?
The crash in the dollar hasn't happened. I'm very often too early on these things, but equally I'm very often right, I'm glad to say. I think that it is only a matter of time before we really do have a dollar crash. And the mechanism by which it will happen, I think, is foreigners holding the dollars will see the inflationary consequences of the money printing that is going on now, and therefore want higher interest rates on their dollars than they get at the moment. I mean, quite obviously, interest rates are far too low. I mean, when you get all this money printing, the effect on prices basically will lead to a situation where you have to raise interest rates to control the effect on price inflation. Otherwise, foreigners will just sell the dollar. Now, that gives us the key as to what is going to happen. If interest rates rise, the financial asset bubble will simply pop, along with, obviously, US treasuries, agency debt, and all the rest of it. Now, that brings a whole new dimension of trouble into the situation for the Fed. But now that we've got Biden in place in America, he will reflate the economy to ensure that the economy recovers after the COVID scare is over. Now, this, to my mind, is completely unrealistic because of the amount of money printing involved. I mean, if you look just at the year from last March, I'm cutting across your fiscal years, but from last March to today, we can see there's a total of over $8 trillion worth of QE required to pay for all the programs, and that includes Biden's 1.9 trillion, which I know hasn't been authorized yet. The figures are enormous. Now, there is absolutely no way that the dollar can hold its value with that level of money printing. And that's just to deal with COVID. Biden also wants to finance green spending. He also wants to ensure the economy recovers. How much more printing there's going to be on top of that, goodness only knows. I mean, the thing is a mess. But it's not just America. I mean, when I look at Europe, we've had the most extraordinary situation with vaccines. You can see that Europe is just, I mean, the leadership in Brussels is just completely incompetent. And when you get an incompetent government like that, the idea that they can handle a crisis, of course, forget it. The Eurozone banks are on the verge of bankruptcy. I mean, I'm going beyond insolvency. They are on the verge of bankruptcy. Now, how do you handle a situation like that when you've got an incompetent bunch of bureaucrats at the top? I mean, this is going to happen, and I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. This is another of my forecasts, which I was a bit too early on. But a combination of events around the world actually make the outlook really look stinking.
Well, listen, I don't want to scold you. We didn't get a crash, but listen, everybody was talking about the dollar being strong, 6 months, 8 months ago when you made this call. You said the dollar's going to be weak, and this is the way the path is. And sure enough, you were right on that. The dollar, I mean, 5% in the world's reserve currency is not a small amount of money, but you're saying you start looking at all the ramp up of this, spendorama going on with all the COVID and the universal basic income and reflating the economy, you said, and you think all the currencies are going to tank, not just the dollar. Right.
It's almost inevitable. I mean, the dollar is doing the most reflation pretty well of any currency. But we all have the dollar as our reserve currency. And where the dollar goes, inevitably, we're all going to go. And, you know, the question then is, at what point does it stop? I mean, at some stage, it has got to be stopped. Otherwise, governments have no money to spend. They can't pay their policemen, they can't pay their armies, they can't pay their bureaucrats, and importantly, the politicians don't even get paid because it's all worthless paper. So at some stage they will stop it, but probably very late in the collapse. The only way it can be stopped is basically to turn paper currencies back into gold substitutes. Now, I'm not talking about something that's going to happen at anything like the current price of gold. How far the purchasing power of the dollar deteriorates before the Biden administration is forced to accept that it's got to go back to a gold standard to save itself, goodness only knows.
So extremely important what you just heard, because when the dollar gets to the point where not even politicians can pay themselves, what are the steps that they're going to take? Okay, and the reason that we have to look at that is because those are going to be the very last people who are going to try to suffer to some type of economic collapse, as we know. All right, and it has always been the consensus that politicians are very, very selfish, and they're always going to look after themselves. And if they get presented with the problem of having a type of hyperinflationary moment where they cannot even pay their own bills, what are the steps that they're going to take? So that is what other countries are looking at. They're going to look at the United States, and they're doing that right now to kind of gauge how much longer can the United States be in control of the SWIFT system, be in control of the world. Because the SWIFT system is the system that the United States uses for them to be able to punish other countries, right, whenever they feel like it. Even though it wasn't supposed to be like that, it became one of the United States' tools to be able to clever other countries over the head. Now, they have abused it over the years. They have abused it against China. They have abused it against Russia. They have abused it against Iran. And because of all those steps that they have taken, what it has done is that it has made the allies look at that and say, wait a minute, we have to do something about this. All right, so we are going to see the shift from the United States because of two different reasons. One being is because we are spending so much money, we're printing money out of thin air, it's becoming worthless. And when it becomes the realization for other leaders throughout the world, then that's when the pullback is going to happen rapidly. Okay, now, the second thing that they're seeing is that if for whatever reason they disagree with the United States, they're going to see that people in their country, whether it's companies and or politicians, become sanctioned. They're going to lose the ability to do the things that they are doing right now. They will be compared to something like Venezuela or Iran, okay, and even to some extent like China and Russia. All right, you know, the United States does take stronger approaches to countries that do not have nuclear weapons. So with that in mind, what is the other countries going to do? Now, I have a small video for you because I really want you to understand what the SWIFT system is. And this video should be hopefully no more than 3 minutes. So pay very close attention because it explains in depth what it's going to do, or what actually it's for, right? And how the United States have actually abused it. Here it is.
With Iran sanctions in question, we're joined now by producer Kay Pritzker. Kay, we were speaking as an In Question team and talking about the fact that SWIFT's been all over the news lately in lots of headlines, but people might not have an idea of what exactly this organization is. So can you just start by explaining what is SWIFT?
Yeah, so SWIFT is a private financial messaging service that's based in Belgium, and what that means is it facilitates the international financial transactions of most of the world. There are a bunch of different systems like SWIFT, but SWIFT is by far the most popular. It serves 11,000 financial institutions in over 200 countries. And basically, when anyone wants to buy or sell something internationally, SWIFT is the one that takes the payment information or the destination that the money is going to and makes sure that money reaches the right place in a secure fashion. And this replaced the telex system, which was basically SWIFT before SWIFT. And this system did the same thing, but it was much slower, and it didn't have a standardized universal code system like SWIFT does, so SWIFT was kind of an improvement on this outdated system.
SWIFT claims it's a neutral institution. Is that true?
No, so SWIFT definitely isn't neutral. Anyone can say that, but their actions have kind of shown the opposite. So starting off in 2006, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and LA Times released a series of articles in June that showed that the United States actually had a system called this Terrorist Finance Tracking Program. And this program allowed the CIA and the US Treasury to have backdoor access to SWIFT's database. So this gives them unprecedented access to, the world's financial transactions, who's sending what where, and this was done under the guise of stopping terrorism, which is the U.S.'s excuse for a lot of things. But this was obviously a violation of a lot of people's sovereignty, and it shows that SWIFT was willing to work with the CIA, with U.S. intelligence, as early as 2006. So that seems fairly unbiased.
But I want to move on to this final question because we don't have a lot of time left. Countries like Iran and Russia, as well as the EU, are saying, look, maybe it's time to look for an alternative to SWIFT. What alternatives are out there, and why would it assist these countries? Yeah, so starting with Russia, there's SPFS, which is basically SWIFT, but it's controlled by Russia, which is a big deal. And this happened after 2014 when the UK was calling on SWIFT to remove Russia from the system because of what happened in Crimea. They said, Russia invaded Crimea, even though no one died there. And, this controversy didn't actually lead to them being de-SWIFted, but Russia was thinking forward, and they said, further sanctions, future sanctions might remove us from SWIFT, so they created SPFS. Iran obviously was just de-SWIFted recently and has been in the past, and their foreign minister recently announced that they already have alternatives on the table. They're looking at alternative means to SWIFT. We don't know what they are yet, but they would be used to conduct trade with the EU as well as other countries, which have all, vocally said, we want to continue engaging with Iran, we want to continue trading. Right. And Iran has also explored digital currencies and cryptocurrencies, similar to Venezuela, which just unveiled the petro. And that's a different strategy. SWIFT and things like that deal with hard currencies, but there's also digital currencies nowadays. And that would basically allow a country like Iran to make a payment digitally, to send money to someone's digital crypto wallet, for example. And you wouldn't need a SWIFT or an SPFS to do that. You just send it over the internet, basically. And then China is creating the China International Payment System, CIPS, which is another SWIFT alternative. And China is the second largest economy in the world. This would be a huge blow to the United States if they created the system. It could be used by most of the world, given the size of China's economy. And it would really thrust the yuan forward in the competition to become the global reserve currency. It would definitely make the yuan a much more popular currency, along with the US dollar and the euro. All right. Well, it only seems to be a matter of time, considering even U.S. allies in Europe are looking for an alternative to SWIFT due to U.S. sanctions. In question, producer Kay Pritzker, thanks so much for coming on once again and breaking it all down.
Hey everyone, so I was sitting here editing the video, and the video turned out to be an hour and 15 minutes after I added, the videos and the articles and all those things. So I am going to have to cut it in half for the simple fact that I don't want people to miss the information that I'm giving. Because, an hour and 15-minute video, most people are not going to watch it. So it's going to be easier for someone to watch 45 minutes and then, the other 30 minutes that's left in it. And rather than watching the whole 1 hour and 15 minutes. So that's the reason why I'm splitting it. With the last video that you just saw, I'm gonna start the other one, so that's the second part of the same video. All right, it's gonna be the same subject. I'm gonna have to do the same thing with the next one. But please listen to all the information, because all of it is very important. Okay, and all those little details is the things that I'm focusing on, and what I really want you to pay attention to. So please watch it, share with your friends and family, and be proactive to the information that I'm giving you before it's too late. But anyways, again, my name is Jose Prado, always ready.
The Man-Made Survival Show.